Let's jump into a new exploration together. Our subject today is La Crosse County, Wisconsin, really a unique corner of the world, nestled right there on the Mississippi River.
And we're looking at it through the lens of the county's own Envision 2050 plan. It's, well, it's a pretty comprehensive document. Gives us a detailed look at the area's past, its present, and where it hopes to go.
Right, so our goal here is to use this plan to build a clear picture of La Crosse County for you. Maybe you're thinking about visiting or even moving there, or perhaps you're just curious about this part of the U.S.
Yeah, we want to uncover what makes it distinct, what challenges it's facing, and sort of its overall character.
Okay, so to really get La Crosse County today, we have to start, well, at the beginning, acknowledging the history of the land itself.
Absolutely. The Envision 2050 plan actually opens right up with that, acknowledging the circumstances that led to the forced removal of the Ho-Chunk people through government treaties.
It's powerful. And the plan makes a point to honor their history of resistance, their resilience.
And it recognizes the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations that reside within Wisconsin's boundaries today. They remain vibrant, sovereign nations.
The document explicitly states respect for that inherent sovereignty.
And it connects that history directly to the present. This history of colonization, it's not just in the past. It informs the county's current work, its vision for a more collaborative future. It's foundational, really.
That makes sense. It really sets the stage. So let's talk about that stage, the physical landscape. La Crosse County is described as this gateway, right, to Wisconsin from the west on the Mississippi.
And also a gateway to the Coulee region.
Ah, the Coulee region. So what's striking is its location within the Driftless region.
Right, the famous Driftless area. The part the last glaciers missed, they didn't flatten it out.
But they still had a huge impact, didn't they? About 11,000 years ago, the glacial meltwater.
Oh, massive amounts of it. That meltwater just carved through this area, dissecting it, creating these deep, scenic valleys and these really sharp ridges you see everywhere.
And those valleys, the French settlers called them coulees, which is where the region gets its name.
Exactly, the Coulee region.
And you can't talk about La Crosse without mentioning the bluffs, these incredible limestone outcroppings on the ridges.
They're especially dramatic along the western edge, right by the Mississippi. That's the defining scenery, that majestic look.
And the plan points out protecting those bluffs and ridgetops is getting more and more critical as development happens.
Yeah, balancing growth with preservation.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a key spot on the Great River Road, that scenic drive along the Mississippi. You can see why.
Definitely. Okay, so connecting that landscape to people and work, La Crosse County acts as a major regional employment hub.
Key sectors are things like manufacturing, agricultural processing, definitely healthcare, and higher education, too.
A pretty diverse mix.
It is. And land use-wise, the county's big, over 300,000 acres. But what's interesting is, even with a metro area, almost 70% is still agriculture or natural cover.
Wow, 70%. That really shows the balance, or the tension, maybe. A regional center, fast-growing towns, but mostly farms and forests.
Right, and the county's planning has to navigate that, how growth happens alongside neighbors, respecting that existing land use. There's prime farmland here.
The plan mentions soil capability classes, like Class I soils, the best kind for farming.
Yeah, protecting that is important. And for the forests, there's the state's Managed Forest Law, the MFL program.
Right, for landowners with 10 or more acres of forest. If they agree to a management plan, sustainable harvesting.
They get a lower property tax rate. And it's significant. As of 2022, about 35,700 acres in the county were enrolled. Shows it's actively used.
Okay, so from land to water, another critical resource shaped by all this geography. There are some major water bodies.
Lake Onalaska is a big one, part of the Mississippi River system, formed by Lock and Dam 7 back in 1937.
About 7,000 acres. It's quite shallow, though, mostly. Average depth only 8 feet, but parts go down to 40.
Yeah. And then there's Lake Neshonoc, which is older, created in 1852 by damming the La Crosse River.
And that one had issues with sedimentation, right, back in the 80s.
Big time. It led to forming a special Lake Neshonoc Protection and Rehabilitation District just to deal with it.
There are smaller ones, too, like Veterans Memorial Park Pond and Van Loon Lake in the Wildlife Refuge. Van Loon is described as a seeping lake, only 3 feet deep. Interesting variety.
Very much so. Now, groundwater. This is tricky. The geology lets rainfall recharge the groundwater pretty quickly, which sounds good.
But
But it also means contamination from the surface can get down there easily, too. The plan notes there are, unfortunately, many contaminated sites.
And demand is increasing with growth. That's a tough combination.
Yeah, they did a groundwater modeling study back in 2003 to try and understand withdrawals and how contaminants might flow.
And there was that specific issue in 2016 with excess nitrates discovered.
Right, which led to testing over 500 wells in 2017, and about 30% came back over the federal standard for nitrates.
Oof, that's significant.
It is. It prompted a nitrate task force, which met for several months and put policies in place to try and reduce human exposure.
And on the flip side, managing wastewater, the Clean Water Act influenced the sewer service area plans. The current one runs to 2035.
Exactly. It sets standards for treatment plants, discharges, and where sewer lines can extend, which, directly shapes where development can happen.
So connecting all these places and people, transportation is key.
Of course.
Yeah.
Interstate 90 cuts right through. That's the big one.
But there's a whole network of other main arteries, too. U.S. highways like 53, 1461, state highways like 16, 35, 33, connecting cities and towns.
And the plan considers freight movement, too. Designated truck routes on state and federal roads, plus local efforts to keep trucks out of residential spots. Specific intermodal connectors are mentioned, too, linking different transport modes.
What about getting around without your own car?
Well, you've got your traditional taxi companies. And the plan mentions TNC's transportation network companies, like ride-sharing services.
Okay. And regional public transit.
Yeah, there's this Scenic Mississippi Regional Transit, the SMRT bus. It runs fixed routes with deviations Monday through Friday. Covers La Crosse and neighboring counties.
4 routes, flat fare of $3, bike carriers, wheelchair accessible. Seems pretty comprehensive for a regional service.
It does. And the county is involved in planning for future improvements across the board: rail, air, water transport. They're supporting efforts like the Second Dealey Amtrak train project, too.
Good to hear. Okay, let's shift to the people and the future vision. La Crosse County's been growing, right?
Yeah, population growth between 10% and 15% in recent decades. Quite steady.
But not everywhere equally. Some areas are seeing really large growth. Towns of Holland and Onalaska, Village of Holman, City of Onalaska, and that's expected to continue.
Right. While other places, like towns of Shelby and Madary, which had seen declines, are now projected to sort of stabilize.
And this dynamic is what the Envision 2050 plan tries to guide, based on 5 core values.
Sustainability, collaboration, equity, forward-thinking, and respect. Those are the guiding principles mentioned.
And the big challenge, as we've touched on, is balancing that growth, the demand for infrastructure, with preserving the farmland and natural resources that make the place special.
Exactly. The plan talks a lot about sustainable community development. They use this idea of the quadruple bottom line.
Quadruple, so not just economy.
Right. Economy, environment, social and cultural aspects, and health and well-being, trying to consider all 4 in decisions.
Interesting framework. Economic development focuses on supporting businesses, outreach, but also supporting nonprofits.
Yeah, recognizing their role. And waste management is another practical piece. Landfill, incineration, recycling.
They recycle some specific things too, like shingles, concrete, tires, yard waste.
And the volume handled has been going up 138,000 tons in 2020, up from about 123,000 in 2007. The plan notes the pandemic caused a big jump in 2020 specifically.
And finally, education. 8 school districts serve the county. La Crosse Public Schools spending per student was a bit above the U.S. average in 2021-22.
And a pretty good student-to-teacher ratio, around 9.6 students per teacher.
Okay, but bringing it back to the environment, the county faces real challenges, especially with weather and water.
Yeah, given the rivers and lakes, large areas are in floodplains. Near the rivers, Lake Onalaska, parts of Bryce Prairie.
And they're seeing more frequent heavy downpours.
That's what the plan states, which increases demand for stormwater infrastructure repairs, flood control strategies, conservation work.
Extreme weather events are described as, well, common now, often leaving towns and landowners with damage to infrastructure, dams, roads, bridges, fields.
And when you get that widespread flooding and erosion, municipal budgets just get stretched thin trying to cope with the aftermath. It's a very real, ongoing issue.
So there you have it. That's kind of a snapshot of La Crosse County, Wisconsin, drawn from its own planning documents.
You've touched on a place with a deep history, tied to the land and its first people.
A region defined visually by those amazing coulees and bluffs of the Driftless area.
Balanced with productive farms and communities that are growing fast.
And we see a community actively trying to manage its resources, water, forests, while planning for sustainable growth, guided by those specific values.
Hopefully, if you were curious about La Crosse County, this gives you a better sense of its character, its key parts, and the dynamics shaping its future.
That may be something to think about. For any growing place, how do you strike that balance? How do you accommodate growth while preserving the very natural beauty and agricultural resources that make it unique?
It's the core question in La Crosse County's vision, and it's a question that resonates far beyond just this one county.